The Atlantic was colorless that night. Not black, not blue, just endless gradients of cold. Wind streaked the water into metallic ribbons. Ice formed on the rails. Every breath turned white. Every word froze between teeth. Convoy HX-231 moved through the dark at 8 knots. 49 merchant ships, each heavy with food, fuel, and steel. Each essential to the survival of Britain in 1943. And each one marked in Dönitz's charts as prey. Above them, the aurora flickered faintly, a weak green arc breaking across the sky. Below, the sea carried men who had long stopped believing in color. On the deck of the corvette HMS Forester, Petty Officer Harold Mason hunched over his radio. A single lamp illuminated his hands. His fingers tapped the key. Short, sharp, deliberate. He was not sending words. He was sending rhythm, false rhythm, part of a deception plan known as Operation Ensign. His orders were simple. Fill the air with meaningless radio noise. Create confusion. Make the German Navy chase shadows. He had done this 100 times. He would not remember this one. At 2:13 Greenwich Mean Time, the 27th of March, 1943, Mason tuned his set to 11.8 megahertzes, an old German naval frequency captured weeks earlier by Y stations. He was supposed to broadcast a fake distress call, imitating a merchant ship under attack. Instead, he misread his instruction sheet. He transmitted on 11.5 megahertzes, a nearby band used by Kriegsmarine Command for U-boat coordination. His call sign, borrowed from captured traffic, matched one used by Group Seawolf, a wolf pack operating 400 miles west of Ireland. The message he sent was brief. It lasted 48 seconds. It began with a call sign header, exactly as German protocol required. B, D, U, and Alle Boot. Then coordinates. Then instruction. Group Seawolf, converge on 57 degrees north, 32 degrees west. Convoy sighted. Intercept immediately. He signed it using the correct authentication suffix, a random 5-letter code used by German staff that night. The code was genuine. It had been broken by Bletchley Park that morning and copied onto his script. It was meant for a different decoy. When the signal ended, Mason wrote a note in the logbook. Transmitted routine signal. Time 2:17. No confirmation. He leaned back. He did not know that his message had traveled much farther than intended. Radio waves bounce on the ionosphere at night. Over the North Atlantic, the cold air bent them perfectly. The message carried hundreds of miles beyond his horizon, beyond his intention. At that moment, 41 German submarines were listening. The U-boats formed a crescent line between Greenland and Ireland. Their commanders, veterans with names that once filled propaganda posters, were trained to respond instantly to command transmissions. U-123, U-664, U-653, each in different sectors, each believing they were part of an invisible hunting machine. Each received the same signal. In U-123, Captain Karl-Heinz Moella woke to the clatter of Morse. His operator scribbled on a pad, checked the prefix, checked the checksum, nodded. "Sir, order from BDU," he said. "Converge at 57 north, 32 west." Moella stared at the map. That was north away from where his lookouts had just reported engine smoke on the southern horizon. He frowned, but routine defeated doubt. "Head 050 degrees," he ordered. "Signal compliance." Around him, other submarines did the same. Within 30 minutes, the entire pack shifted formation, turning toward an ocean quadrant where nothing existed. Their instruments clicked. Gyros hummed. Diesels growled. The ocean swallowed the sound. At 3:20, Mason's signal had already become a rumor among Allied codebreakers. In the listening post at Thurso, Scotland, a young WREN operator, Mary Collingwood, intercepted multiple German transmissions, repeating the same coordinates. She marked them down. Confused. The format matched U-boat command orders, but they were wrong. They were moving the enemy away from the convoy. At Bletchley Park, the intercept reached Hut 8. Analysts compared the code header. The checksum matched an earlier transmission, but the phrasing was slightly off. They realized it was British in origin. They realized it was a mistake. Commander Edward Travis, head of Bletchley operations, wrote in his log, "Our own transmission appears to have been mistaken for German control traffic. Possible enemy misdirection. Monitor developments. No correction to be sent." No one corrected it. No one dared. The risk of revealing the extent of their code-breaking capability was greater than the risk of silence. So the British watched as their enemy deceived itself. For 12 hours, the Atlantic fell eerily still. No torpedo tracks. No distress calls. No sonar pings. Merchantmen moved in single file. Their hulls cut the sea into black ribbons. Men stood on deck, smoking cigarettes they couldn't taste, too cold to feel their own fingers. One lookout aboard the Empire Ability recalled later, "We kept expecting the attack. The silence was worse than battle. It was like waiting for thunder that never came." By midday, the convoy had moved 50 miles east. The U-boats, still chasing phantom orders, were heading north-northwest. They crossed paths with empty sea. Their fuel gauges dropped. Their morale followed. Why did they obey? Because they had been trained to. Because the German Navy was built on obedience efficient, mechanical, absolute. Admiral Dönitz's doctrine was clear. Communication equals control. Control equals victory. Every U-boat was a nerve in a single brain. If the brain gave a command, the nerve responded instantly. Doubt was inefficiency. Hesitation was weakness. In a system that worshipped discipline, an order, any order, was sacred. The irony: the better the system worked, the more vulnerable it became. Because when the voice of command was imitated perfectly, the entire machine followed a phantom. That is what happened on March 27. The Kriegsmarine obeyed the echo of its own precision. Inside U-664, the air smelled of metal, sweat, and oil. Condensation dripped from the ceiling. Men moved in slow rhythm between stations. At 4, the cook served canned sauerkraut. The radio man adjusted his headphones. He heard nothing but static. The captain, Oberleutnant Adolf Graf, paced. His boat had been at sea for 23 days. 2 crewmen had frostbite on their fingers. Another had developed an ear infection from pressure changes. They were tired, superstitious, and half-mad. Graf looked at the order again. He didn't question it. He couldn't afford to. If he ignored a command from B, D, U, he risked court-martial, or worse. So he followed. In his log he wrote, "Converging with group at indicated coordinates. No sighting. Fuel expenditure higher than anticipated." Those were the last words before he went silent for 36 hours. He later said, in Allied captivity, "We thought we were moving toward a convoy. We were moving toward the end of our endurance." Every war has a battlefield that thinks for itself. In the Atlantic, that battlefield was the weather. Storms erased plans. Static devoured commands. The ocean made its own decisions. By 1943, radio had become the war's nervous system. Messages replaced presence. Voice replaced vision. Every navy was ruled by what it heard. But radio is not truth. It is belief. And belief can be engineered, or, as that night proved, accidentally constructed. The ocean doesn't care about who speaks. It carries all voices the same. And sometimes, it lets one wrong note echo farther than all the right ones. By 8 hours, March 28, Dönitz's operations center at Kurneval, near Lorient, was confused. Plotting boards showed erratic U-boat movement. Pins on the map drifted northward against headquarters' standing plan. Vice Admiral Eberhard Gott, Chief of Operations, asked, "Who authorized this convergence?" No one answered. Radio logs showed the order as genuine. It bore command authentication. It bore the official code suffix. It bore their own tone. Gott considered a counter-order, but hesitated. Every transmission risked interception by Allied direction finding. The Kriegsmarine had already lost U-22 and U-665 to radio tracing. He waited. The delay doomed the operation. By the time clarification reached the fleet, the Wolfpack had dispersed across 300 nautical miles of empty sea. In theory, HX-231 should have been destroyed. It was lightly escorted compared to later convoys. Its destroyers were short on depth charges. Its air cover intermittent. It was perfect prey. But prey without predator is just a convoy. The ship steamed on. The ocean widened between them and the enemy. At 14:30, a single U-boat U-435 caught a glimpse of smoke. It fired 2 torpedoes blindly. Both missed. The submarine dove, reported contact, then fell silent under false interference. The convoy's commodore, Commander R.M. Dixon, recorded the event in dry language. Enemy activity negligible, sea state moderate, morale maintained. He never knew why. XI. The men behind the desks. Bletchley Park in 1943 was a strange world. Brilliance under monotony. Genius under tea breaks. Rows of women transcribing endless Morse code. Rows of men calculating rotors and plugboards. When the Seawolf incident appeared in decrypts, no one celebrated. They classified it, analyzed it, archived it. Alan Turing himself was no longer working directly on U-boat codes by then, but his colleagues in Hut 8 knew what they had witnessed, a full enemy formation moving under the weight of a British-generated signal. Commander Travis wrote later, "It was the most perfect failure we ever engineered." The irony was lost on most. War machines require faith. Not moral faith. Procedural faith. The German Navy believed in its codebooks the way a church believes in Scripture. Each transmission began and ended with ritual phrases. Each operator used pre-assigned groups of letters called Kengruppen. These patterns became sacred. That sacredness was their undoing, because when the enemy learned the ritual, he learned how to mimic divinity. The British did not intend to play God that night, but they did. Their accidental signal wore the voice of omnipotence, and the men of the sea obeyed it. Cognitive psychologists who later studied wartime decision-making called it the obedience reflex. Under intense pressure, human beings seek relief in procedure. They delegate choice to structure. They act not from belief, but from habit. The U-boat crews were trained for mechanical obedience. They trusted the sound of their code's rhythm. The dots and dashes were familiar as heartbeat. When Mason's signal reached them, it spoke that language perfectly. The same pace, the same gaps between code groups, the same clipped phrasing. The illusion was total because it matched their expectation. That is the real reason they followed it. Not because they believed it rationally, but because it felt right. War is full of moments like this, where familiarity kills judgment. In the following weeks, German command analyzed the loss of contact. They blamed weather. They blamed Allied radar. They blamed crew fatigue. No one blamed radio error. To do so would admit vulnerability in the system. But the effects lingered. The Seawolf incident forced Dönitz to reconsider radio discipline. He reduced broadcast duration. He ordered stricter authentication protocols. Ironically, this made communication slower and coordination weaker. Each fix introduced delay. Each delay gave the Allies time. From March onward, U-boat efficiency declined. By May 1943, known as Black May, losses soared. 41 submarines were sunk in 1 month. The Battle of the Atlantic turned. Historians rarely attribute that shift to one night. But in truth, that night revealed the fragility that would soon collapse entirely. Decades later, the message still exists. Typed on thin paper. Filed under operational deception archives. 27 March 1943. The top reads, Origin, HF, DF section, Western approaches. Type, Signal Deception Transmission. Transmitted, 2:17 GMT. Text, Group Seawolf converge, 57 newtons, 32 W. Remarks, sent in, error. That is all. No exclamation. No triumph. No recognition that those 48 seconds had changed a night and perhaps the balance of a campaign. When Mason finished his shift, he stepped out onto the deck. The air smelled of salt and diesel. The horizon was empty. He smoked a cigarette and watched his breath drift away. He did not know that hundreds of miles north, dozens of men in steel coffins were following his voice into nowhere. He was 26 years old. He had joined the Navy at 18. He had never fired a gun. He fought his war through sound. Years later, when asked about his service, he said, "I never killed anyone. But one night, I may have stopped some from dying. That's enough." War historians often look for great causes, battles, doctrines, leaders. They miss the small things, the accidents that rewrite events quietly. A transmission misread, a frequency misplaced, a decision delayed. These moments are not dramatic. They have no music, no glory. But they decide wars. The night of March 27 is one of them. It shows how fragile even the most disciplined war machine can be. How one key, pressed at the wrong second, can redirect the fate of fleets. After the war, Allied interrogators asked surviving U-boat captains about the incident. Many remembered it. They called it the Ghost Convoy. Moela, from U-123, testified, "We were ordered north. We found nothing. We thought the English had invented an invisible ship." Another officer, Gunther Hessler, insisted. "It was no mistake. It was a deception. We were tricked by a phantom order." Even when told the truth, they did not believe it. Perhaps that is the final irony. They could accept defeat by genius, but not by accident. Every modern war depends on information. Every military believes its communications are secure. Yet the greater the complexity, the greater the fragility. The Seawolf incident teaches this. War built on signals can be undone by a signal. The German Navy sought control through technology. The British sought survival through improvisation. Between them stood chance, and chance spoke German that night. The Atlantic listened. It echoed back confusion. And in that confusion, lives were spared. The story remained classified for nearly 30 years. When it was finally declassified in the 1970 seconds, few noticed. It was overshadowed by larger tales, the Enigma breakthrough, the Normandy deception, the fall of Berlin. But among cryptologists, it became a quiet legend. They called it the perfect mistake. In training lectures, they studied it as an example of emergent deception, an accident producing intentional effect. In ethics debates, they cited it as proof that war rewards chance as much as skill. In war colleges, instructors told their students, "Never forget that your enemy can lose by trusting himself too much." Decades later, when digital warfare replaced radio, the lessons still applied. Computers now send the signals. Humans still obey them. And the same danger remains. When networks replace trust, the first lie that sounds true can paralyze an army. The Seawolf incident is not ancient history. It is prophecy. History remembers victories. It rarely remembers silence. But that night, silence was victory. No one cheered. No one even knew. Ships kept steaming. Men kept working. The world turned. A single radio operator, in a corvette frozen by Atlantic wind, made a mistake that saved a fleet. The German Navy, disciplined to perfection, followed that mistake into the void. The sea swallowed the evidence. Only the logs remained. Only the silence testified. There was no battle that night. No wreckage, no smoke, no fire. Only a message that never should have been sent. Only an empire of machines obeying the wrong voice. And in that moment, for once, error was mercy.